Today I want to talk to you guys about the 5 main reasons that I see small farms failing. I've traveled all over North America. I know thousands of farmers across the world, and these are the 5 things that I've identified in my own experience that are the things that are holding farmers back from getting out there and crushing it right away. Let's get into it. I want to start out by saying that the reason I make all of these videos and all of this content is I truly want to help small farmers succeed. I really believe that small-scale agriculture can not only change the face of agriculture and the food system as we know it, but it can also craft better human beings. And I'm not saying that farmers are better than anybody else. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that when you go through and understand a productive living system like a farm, you learn a lot about yourself and the natural world. And when I've seen people go through that transformation, particularly myself, I see a transformation of people who become people who might have been complainers before and people that do a lot of talking to people of action, people who get things done and make things happen. And that's why I think small-scale agriculture is so important, because it appeals to a younger generation. You know, the old school incumbent agriculture that we've known for the last 100 years is dying. It is literally dying. The average age of farmers in North America is over 60 years old now, and there's nobody's going in to replace those people. So in the next 10 years, we're going to see a massive transformation of not only the face of agriculture, but also who owns the title of the land that people are farming on. So I think it's a great opportunity to seize the day and see all this change as a blessing in disguise and come in and revitalize the industry with new blood and new ideas. So that's why I make these videos. So I'm going to go from number 5 through 1, 5 being on the bottom of the scale and number 1 being the number 1 thing that I think is hurting farmers and preventing them from succeeding. So number 5, too many farmers in the small-scale agriculture space, particularly urban farmers, get too obsessed with their ideology. They get too, they look at these big world issues like social justice, environmentalism, economics, politics, and they want to save the world, and that's a really good cause. But when you get too obsessed with these big ideas, you often miss the opportunity right in front of you to change something. And I think there's some meaning behind the statement, think globally, act locally, in the sense that if you might have all these ideas of how you think the world ought to be, but what can you do right now to make a change? And if you're too obsessed with these issues, it can seem overwhelming, but also sometimes depressing, because you might be making traction in your local area, but then you look at the world at large and then it seems overwhelming. And there's many people who are guilty of this, and this guy in particular has been probably the most criminal with this. This held me back for years from getting ahead, because what the ideology does is it creates a barrier to entry between you and getting to know another person who might have a different idea of how the world ought to be. And if you continuously hold your ideology in front of your face, like my handkerchief, and that prevents you from getting to know another person. Because one thing that's so great about being a farmer and being a producer of food is that it transcends most cultural barriers, whether they be culture itself, language, class, a variety of different things. When you sell food to somebody, it's simple. You know, when I was an indie rock musician, that was a barrier to entry for me, because it was like, if you didn't get my music, then we couldn't understand each other. But as a farmer, I've learned that we can understand so many people just because we can connect on the most simplest thing, which is food and eating. How simple can that be? So ideology isn't necessarily a bad thing as long as it doesn't hurt anybody. But like what I've said many times before is, keep your ideology, but just keep it in your back pocket. Keep it here. It's always with you. It's part of who you are. It helps shape how you see the world and how you might want to change it, but don't strap it to your head and let it become a barrier to entry to getting to know other people who might have slightly different views. Number 4, Too many farmers spend their time trying to pursue low-end market streams, and so there can be a variety of different market streams in there. I'll talk about one specifically that I see a lot, which is a lot of farms that they want to go for the CSA model, and that's not a bad thing, and a CSA isn't necessarily a low-value market stream. But when you're a new farmer and you're trying to figure it out, you're trying to learn your production, you're trying to understand your season, you're trying to figure out the days to maturity as they change throughout the season, a CSA kind of locks you into an obligation with a group of customers that is risky for you, because if you don't continuously provide a box that has value for people, you're going to lose customers, and you might not even be able to hold on to the ones that you already have, certainly grow it into the next year. So go to the market stream that is the path of least resistance. That's the easiest thing to start with. Sometimes, that could be a variety of things. Most commonly, I see it as a farmer's market. Just focus on doing a Saturday farmer's market, get in there, get some stuff, get to know people, get to know the kinds of products they're looking for, and then scale it from there. If you start with the CSA, you take on a lot of risk, but you also limit yourself in reaching new people, and that's what's so great about a farmer's market. So again, there's not really a silver bullet with that one on the best place to start, but I will say always follow the path of least resistance. Go to the market streams that are the easiest to get into and easiest to roll with and grow. Number 3 is too many people. Oh man, I see this so much. They don't start with the right equipment. They start with basically nothing, or they think they can get away with basically spending very little cash, and they don't have a walk-in cooler, they don't even have a seeder, and they want to just bootstrap it. And hey, I'm all about bootstrapping it, but you need to have some cash if you're going to start a business. You can't really start a farm with no money. Like, I suppose anything is possible, and it's certainly possible to do it over time where you just keep incrementally growing. But if you want to start a farm and be in business in the next year or so, you need to spend some money. I've been able to start farms on $5,000, anywhere between $5,000 and $50,000. $10,000 is a good number to start with. You can start on $5,000, but you're going to have to be really choosy about the things you buy. But there's some basic infrastructure that you just have to have on your farm. You got to have walk-in coolers, or a walk-in cooler. Piecing together a bunch of refrigerators is a recipe for stress and spoiled product, and I wouldn't recommend it. Not using a seeder. I can't tell you how many farms I've seen where people don't even have a seeder. They're sprinkling seed with their fingertips on rows, with making string lines on a bed and sprinkling seeds in. That's insane. If you want to be a commercial farm, you got to act like a commercial farm, and you need to have some of the core infrastructure in place to do that. Walk-in cooler, seeder, perhaps some small machinery, soil working machinery if you need it, transportation vehicle. You got to have your post-harvest systems down. I've made tons of videos on this. They're all in my book. You can do it yourself with a lot of these things. But post-harvest infrastructure is very key, and it's often the bottleneck for a lot of farms, because you might have things sorted out in the field, but then when it comes off the field, if you don't have systems in place to move that product fast and get it through, it's where you're going to continuously run into problems. Like on our farm right now, 80% of our time is spent in post-harvest. Only 20% is in the field. And most of the time where I see farmers bottlenecking is on their post-harvest. So the message here is get the right gear right away. You can find cheap options for this. You can build cheap walk-in coolers. I've done videos on that myself. You can buy used equipment. You can bootstrap it. But the core things you got to have in place if you want to be a commercial farm. Number 2, this one is classic within the permaculture space. I see it almost every day. I see it in the YouTube comments. I get emails. In my consulting, it's the thing that I'm always telling people to do, is they're taking on too many things at once. They want to do it all. They've seen Jeff Lawton's videos, they've seen Sepp Holzer, they've seen all the greats of permaculture and regenerative or sustainable ag, and they want to do it all. And trying to do it all is not a good place to start. You want to start with A. You know, if you got your goal of the end of the alphabet, that's the letter Z, you got to start somewhere. So you go A to B, then you go B to C. It's all about picking some things that you can do now, have some small successes, and then move on to the next thing. When you try to multitask and get all these things happening at once, you'll never get started, and that's the one thing that'll stop you consistently from getting traction. So figure out what you want to do and hunker down and go, okay, what's the next step? And just go from there. Okay, the number one thing. You know, when I was writing the content for this video and I was looking at a long list of things and reasons that farms fail, I had 10 or 15 different things, but this was the number one across the board because I see it everywhere. I see it not only in small market gardens, but I see it in all kinds of regenerative and sustainable farming businesses, whether they're doing pastured poultry, they're raising, they're doing silvopasture, they're raising animals, you know, whatever it is. I've seen this is the number one thing, is that not enough of us are approaching our farms like a business and really paying attention to what's coming in and what's coming out and making sure that the bottom line makes sense. Because we all want to do good things with our farm. We all have big ambitions on how we want to change the world and help our community and build topsoil, and all of this stuff is great and this is all really important. But at the end of the day, if you don't run it like a business, you will fail in time. You can only go so long with huge ideas. You need to run it like a business. This is why I encourage farmers to use spreadsheets and analyze data. I wrote a whole chapter out of my book. If you haven't read my book, you will find that chapter very helpful. But it's really all about analyzing information, looking at what's coming in, look at the sales, and then using that information to even speculate on the future. That way you can help plan better. You can help create better roadmaps of and benchmarks of success. If you don't know where you've been, you will not know where you're going. Okay guys, that is my number 5. Again, I want to help small farmers, and the reason I've put this list together is because I know it's going to ring true with a lot of people out there, and I really just want to help you guys succeed. I really believe we can revolutionize agriculture and the world through small farming. So get out there and crush it.